Welcome, everyone. My name is Noelle Bakhtian. I'm the director of CASE, the Center for Advanced Energy Studies. I'm so happy to be able to welcome you to our second Coping During COVID seminar. The impetus for this series was really just the fact that we know that a lot of people are going to be telecommuting, we're sheltering in place, we're stuck at home. It's been 2 months now, and that poses new challenges. And CASE is here to really leverage the expertise and to collaborate across our members to really provide value to all of our stakeholders. So the students, the faculty, the INL researchers, staff, everyone across the 5 CASE members. The first session that we had was all about mental health, and you can find that on our website if you're interested in going back to see that seminar. The next one we have that's going to be coming up is going to be more on ways to collaborate virtually. So stay tuned for that date. And if you have any other ideas on corona-related topics for this seminar series, please feel free to contact me. My email is noel, N-O-E-L, @inl.gov. But what I really want to concentrate on is today's seminar. So today's seminar is titled Nutrition Wellness Through Mindful Eating. We have an amazing sports dietitian from Idaho State University, Natalie Christensen, to talk to us today. We're just so thrilled to have her here. And she's going to be discussing nutrition, the factors that influence our food choices, and the concept of mindful eating in general. A little bit of background on Natalie. She's a graduate and a former athlete at ISU who now consults athletes, trainers, coaches, and administrators on the impact of nutrition on competitive performance. I also wanted to give just a quick 101 on CASE for those of you who aren't familiar with our consortium. CASE, the Center for Advanced Energy Studies, is a research, education, and innovation consortium that brings together 5 entities. One is the Department of Energy's Idaho National Laboratory, and the other 4 are all of the public research universities of Idaho and Wyoming. So Boise State, Idaho State, of course, University of Idaho, and University of Wyoming. CASE is all about collaboration, like I mentioned, and this seminar series is a good example of some of the leveraging that we try to do across our experts and our resources to provide value for all of you. Finally, I just wanted to provide some quick thanks to 2 folks on my staff who really stepped up and volunteered to organize this entire seminar series on top of everything else they're doing. So huge thanks to Donna Wethrich and to Blanca Rico. Really appreciate you guys. Logistics-wise, what you guys need to know is that everyone's going to be on mute the entire time. If you do have questions, please go over to the GoToWebinar control panel and find the questions section, not the chat section, but the questions section, and feel free to put as many questions as you want in there. Natalie's actually going to be answering all the questions at the end. That's going to be moderated as well. So thanks for all your awesome questions. Can't wait to see those. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Natalie. Thank you.
Thank you, Noelle. I appreciate that introduction, and I really am happy to have this opportunity to present and to speak to you today about a subject that I really am passionate about, and about a subject that really is on our minds right now, I do believe, during this COVID-19 struggle that we're having. So we're going to discuss just nutrition wellness through mindful eating. When I talk about wellness, I just want to kind of give a definition of what I mean by wellness when I'm talking about wellness. There's a lot of different definitions of wellness, and so I was able to find kind of a general agreement out there that wellness is a conscious, self-directed, and evolving process of achieving full potential, that it is multidimensional, holistic, encompasses lifestyle, mental and spiritual well-being, as well as the environment, and it is positive and affirming. So when I talk about wellness, that's the basic, broad, multidimensional concept that I'm talking about. When we talk about how nutrition influences wellness, I found this wellness wheel. There's a lot of wellness wheels out there. Some of them have more dimensions than 6. Some of them have less. So I don't get hung up on that. But this particular one, I just liked the little pictures. So if you look at some of these depicted dimensions of wellness, they talk about environment, emotional, intellectual, physical, social, spiritual, and all of those dimensions are influenced by nutrition in some way or another. And so realizing that nutrition is interwoven throughout every area and dimension of wellness is really important for us to always remember when we're talking about nutrition and how we're going to incorporate nutrition and health and wellness into our lives. And as a dietitian, whenever I'm doing counseling, whether it's an athlete or a weight management client or somebody who's struggling with chronic disease, I'm always trying to keep all these dimensions and this holistic view of wellness in mind when we talk about nutrition. So specifically right now, we're going through a really interesting struggle right now with the COVID-19. There's a lot of impact that this situation has had on nutrition. There's limited shopping, whether it's shortened hours at our grocery stores, or maybe you can't get in as often as you'd like. Maybe you have somebody doing the shopping for you because it's something that maybe you're high risk and you're not able to go. So limited shopping opportunities. Maybe there's a possible limit on certain foods. Foods that you're used to are not as available as you thought, or as they used to be. I've noticed a lot of economic impact on this, right? Many of us have noticed that. There's limited income. Maybe there's a loss of work, which can really spur feelings of food insecurity and struggles of food insecurity. There are often people who say, well, there's a whole lot of beans available at the store, but I don't know how to incorporate beans into a diet. That's not something I'm used to. So maybe the foods that are available are not something you're used to and you don't know how to prepare or cook those foods. Many of us are having a lot more time at home, and that is just a shift in our schedules. Our time is now structured differently. Our meal times are shifted. Our eating habits are shifting. I know at my house, I have 5 kiddos, high school down to grade school. We're trying to do online learning at the same time as streaming my job, and my husband's streaming his job. We can't do it all in a normal 6-hour school day. We have to spread it out. We have to stagger. And that has shifted a lot of our time structure around. So these things, all of these shifts that may or may not have to do directly with food and nutrition, they can increase a lot of emotions. And food, as we know, is very much associated with emotions. I know last month you had a great presentation, I'm sure, on mental wellness. And it's a big deal. It's a big area of research right now in people that are struggling with mental wellness right now. And food, like I said, is really associated with that. Maybe we have feelings of isolation if you're home alone or not seeing the people that you usually see. Maybe you're surrounded by chaos or family with a lot of extra responsibilities. I know for us, if we do not build physical activity into our day, it doesn't happen. And that is not normal. We're usually in the middle of sports and in the middle of regular schedules that we are used to having physical activity on a regular basis. So a lot of people are struggling with that. I know we are. And if anybody has teenagers, we know that they have disturbed sleep and wake cycles. Oh my word, mine are killing me. They can't get out of bed and they don't go to bed. And it's not just teenagers. Those just seem to be blaring in my face right now. But we have, there's studies actually out there about how our sleep cycles are disturbed right now, which also, when the sleep cycle is disturbed and there's higher amounts of stress, those things can affect what we eat and how we handle food, what types of foods we choose. And it can really affect weight gain and maybe weight loss, depending on your situation. So nutrition is interwoven through all of this impact that COVID is having on her. So I'm talking to a lot of different people, and how are they handling it? How are they approaching this COVID problem that they're struggling with? I've had many people say they're mindlessly eating. They are not planning a menu. Everything's just up in the air. They're eating calorie-rich, nutrient-poor, packaged convenience foods just because they haven't been able to function in this new schedule. Maybe there are people, and I actually have talked to people that are struggling with an income, so they're just assuming that they can't afford healthy foods. Those things are maybe a luxury they feel like right now, and so they're buying the really inexpensive, cheap shelf-stable stuff that might be really nutrient poor. There's a lot, and those types of foods tend to be sugar-laden and laden with a lot of preservatives and things like that. And maybe those things really stem from maybe a lack of shopping and cooking skills. I know when I went to the grocery store, it was right in the very beginning of things you're hearing about it on the East Coast, but it hadn't quite hit Idaho yet, or maybe it's been starting in Utah. But I went to a case lot sale at a nearby grocery store, and it was fascinating to me to see the things that were completely gone and the things that there were plenty of. So there was obviously no toilet paper, but there was the pie filling was gone. I thought that was fascinating. A lot of the canned fruit was gone, all the ramen gone. There's no ramen noodles anywhere. Mac and cheese, all those things were gone. All the boxed type foods were gone, but there were plenty of canned meats, canned tuna, canned chicken. There was plenty of canned beans or dried beans. There was plenty of whole grains that I noticed around. I thought it was really fascinating, the things that flew off the shelf, and in my opinion, kind of mindlessly, not thinking about incorporating nutrient-dense foods into shelf-stable things in our home. So I thought that was pretty fascinating. Then there's the other end of the spectrum when we're going through these struggles that I've also seen, when food becomes something that is always on your mind. It's all-consuming, it's controlling. Maybe you have some major fears of food, certain types of food. There are certain people that are oh, and it's also time for summer shredding. I don't know if you guys have heard of summer shreds, but it's time for dieting. It's summer, people talking about getting in their bathing suits, and it is diet time. So there's major restricting going on whole food groups and things like that. And a lot of these diet mentality, as well as when it gets beyond that, can get into disordered eating disorders, when food becomes something that is associated with a lot of guilt, maybe self-loathing. When you're on those kind of unhealthy food relationships and maybe on a restrictive diet, you're really socially isolated even more so than you would be in COVID, right? Because you can't eat with people. If you're a mom on a diet or surrounded by your family, you're going to probably not be eating with your family, which is kind of a sad thing during a time like this. But there are also feelings of maybe you feel like a loss of control when you're eating. You don't feel, there's not a healthy relationship with food, and it is really consumed by emotion and fear and anxiety and guilt. So there are black and white, two really extremes on how we can handle this kind of coping with food during this time. And also, always there's that food insecurity piece that some may be really struggling with when they're constantly worried about maybe where their next meal is going to come from if they've been struggling with finances. So what we're trying to do now, and I'm trying to encourage people to do, I'm posting on social media for my athletes. That's kind of my main way that I reach them right now, is we're trying to encourage them to find balance, to really incorporate mindful eating techniques and mindfulness into their days and into their eating, into their menu planning, and into their athletics. So this is not just something for athletes. It's been a lot of research actually on mindfulness. It started, I think, back in the 1970s. This is where I think it really became really popular, by Dr. Jon Kabat-Zinn. And I have some books at the end of this that he's written that just kind of go over basic mindfulness principles, and he's got some really good tips. And he talks about how mindfulness can really help with pain, with stress, medical issues, work quality, and there's actually lots and lots of research, peer-reviewed articles on mindfulness and how it affects these specific areas. They actually have incorporated all of these things from Dr. Kabat-Zinn in a mindfulness center at Brown University. And so I was able to find a bunch of information from the mindfulness center there. They incorporate all these things in workplace wellness, and it's actually right now I work with athletes. They're kind of my main population that I work with right now, but they're really getting into mindfulness with athletics. They just signed with like the MLS and the MLB. They just signed with Headspace, I believe is what it's called. It's a app that encourages mindfulness and has them track their sleep and their meditation and their nutrition and things like that. And they're really finding that it's helpful in athletic performance, in recovery, obviously, in being able to focus and perform when you're under high stress, those types of things. And at the end of the day, kind of the core principle is awareness of mindfulness focuses on awareness. And if we are aware of some behavior change theory, awareness is at the core of behavior change. So if we're trying to be more mindful and trying to change a behavior, mindfulness is really key in encouraging awareness and focusing in on having control over changing those behaviors. So this is just some of the research that I found from Brown University at that mindfulness center there in Providence, Rhode Island. They found through studies that it can really increase the focus, calmness, flexible thinking, emotional regulation, obviously, creativity, innovation, and memory within the workplace. They found that overall well-being, including resilience, stress hardiness, sense of balance, engagement with life, obviously overall happiness is really, mindfulness can help increase those things. And now that the studies have been really focusing even more so on physical health, they're talking about chronic disease now, chronic pain specifically, a lot of science on mindfulness and overall health, medical symptoms. The mindful eating section is kind of taken off as well. Maybe you've heard of intuitive eating as well. It's also very similar. So they're looking into mindfulness as far as weight management counseling. What's your relationship with food, eating disorders, disordered eating, and utilizing mindfulness concepts within treatment and prevention of those things. So mindfulness can really just be the core of a lot of wellness. If we're talking about holistic and multidimensional wellness, mindfulness can be one of those things really at the core. So mindful eating, specifically a branch, right, of mindfulness, is really gaining widespread support. I wonder how many of you have actually maybe read about it or thought about it. Maybe you're already incorporating some of these tips and principles, but it's really for lifelong holistic health. And it can be used as a tool for improving eating behavior. They're utilizing it in studies right now to see if it helps with weight control. And I know some studies are inconclusive as far as weight loss. But at the end of the day, there were several studies that I just cited right here that there was strong evidence that it definitely helps with food cravings, portion control, long-term benefits to weight reduction. So some of these studies just weren't as long-term enough, but they did find immediate mindfulness positive outcomes with food cravings and portion control. Maybe not immediate weight reduction, but at the end of the day, there was a really health and wellness benefit there. There was a systematic review done on emotional eating and how effective mindfulness was in helping emotional eating in weight management counseling. And it found that it was effective and that it was something that they are encouraging through research to incorporate into those types of programs to help with that. And there's also, like it says here, diabetes education, because if you can be more mindful and aware, it really helps you with blood sugar regulation and food choices. And it can really help when you're put in those situations, maybe with chronic disease and diabetes in particular, where you have to be very conscientious about what you eat. And it can feel like a trap. It can feel like you're being controlled all day long by what you can and cannot eat. And if you can have mindful eating techniques throughout the day, it can really foster a more healthful relationship with food. So yes, mindful eating is research-based, and it is being researched in a lot of different ways, trying to figure out how and what kind of impact it can have on a lot of different areas of nutrition and wellness. So the concept of mindful eating, like this is just a picture I found from Anne Bracken's therapy online, that she came up with this great little schematic here. And it talks about how awareness, right? We need to start with awareness. So we begin by observing and asking ourselves questions. Maybe our eating behaviors, we'll notice, are more habitual and they're unconscious behaviors. So if we can bring awareness to our emotions, our feelings, and what we're choosing, like, am I hungry, is as a really common mindful eating question they ask often. Am I hungry? And is this something I really do want to eat? Maybe I'm just thirsty. Maybe I need to get up and move around. Am I anxious? Maybe it's just an anxiousness that I'm feeling, not necessarily munchy. I don't need to go eat. So just bringing awareness to what is going on in your body right then, at that moment, before you start eating something. And then taking that information and making a decision that you are in control of. You're listening to your body, you make a decision. Say you decide to eat. You're going to be present. They're going to encourage you to be present in that eating experience. And then you're going to be encouraged to savor that food. Is it what you were expecting? Are you disenchanted by the food you just put in your mouth? Or you're like, yes, this is a great texture, it's a great flavor, it's a great temperature, it is something that's really calming me, and maybe I really was hungry, and it's going to help satisfy those feelings of hunger that I have right now. So savoring that taste, being in the moment. One of the key things about mindful eating is being non-judgmental. They say put on your scientific cap. A lot of you are probably really good at looking at things scientifically without judgment, right? And we had a little comment right before this when we were talking, like, that guilt is just there when you make food decisions, like it's ingrained in us, as I think it was stated. So being really aware of those emotions that are associated with what we're eating at that moment, and this is where I think it's going to take a lot of practice for many of us, try to look at it non-judgmentally, accepting that you made that decision, you're savoring it, and you're going to accept your emotions, the way your body feels, whether it's hungry or not, and just noting that. Take notes of those things, learn from that, and try really hard to not judge yourself or your body on that. The next step, it says be aware. So just being aware, non-judgmentally, of all of the things that you're feeling, whether it's hunger, fullness, stress, anxiety, depression, whatever you're feeling. Being aware of that, taking note of that, non-judgmentally, and then maybe at the very end, asking yourself questions. Right there it says, where did I learn my eating habits? Like it's like a check-in. Maybe I am completely satisfied. I know there's still half a box of Oreos left, but as I sit here, I'm feeling like I had enough. I'm feeling satisfied. Maybe you don't need to continue to eat those. Or maybe you're really hungry and you realize, actually, that was just the easy thing. What I need to do is feed my body something else. Just asking questions and really kind of being present through the entire eating experience. So the different cycles we talked about for mindless eating, or different cycles of eating. There's mindless, we talked about, finding balance in the middle of mindful, or there's that diet mentality is kind of what I call it, on the other end of the spectrum. There's black and there's white, and we're really trying to find the gray area in the middle of mindfulness and balance. So asking your questions. So this page just kind of goes through more questions that you might ask yourself during an eating experience. So why are we eating, right? Pause. Take a second and ask, what are my emotions? Are there any? Maybe there's not. Fine. Just pause and find out. Maybe at the end of the day, it really is. I'm hungry and I need to eat something. And it doesn't matter what it is. I just need calories. That's okay. Take note of that and be mindful of that. But just know that it's your decision. Like, you took that information, you processed it, and you decided how you were going to respond. Open-minded, again, do it non-judgmentally, kind of scientifically if you can, and that's going to take practice, especially for those of us who might have been off and on different diets. We're going to have to practice that one. So are you hungry for chocolate, let's say? And you're going to be like, again? Because I'm always hungry for chocolate. Like, why? Is it because I'm hungry? Is it because I might be stressed out? Is it that time of the month? I don't know. Or are we celebrating? Is it something that I'm out with my friends and there's a birthday party and we're celebrating and it's chocolate and I love it? So finding out kind of where it's coming from, why, is going to be something that gives you control, where you can gather that information and make a decision. The diet mentality is going to be like, we all know, it's like self-control, right? They say it's all about telling yourself you can't have it. That I'm going to not choose. I'm going to be out with my friends and I'm not going to eat cake. I'm going to have carrots and hummus. Now, if you mindfully do that, fantastic. And if you say, no, really, I'm really hungry, and if I eat that cake, I'm going to get a headache and I'm not going to be able to function when I get back to work, so I brought something else to eat. Fantastic. That's mindful, that's purposeful, and that shows that you're in control. And you can control those feelings and those choices and those emotions. So being aware that if you choose to eat that cake, great. Make sure you savor it. Make sure you enjoy it. Give yourself permission to enjoy it. Or maybe you were so excited. I know I'm always this way. Like when someone brings donuts to the office, like they smell so good, they look so good. And I'm like kind of excited, especially when it's like a reason. There's something to celebrate in the office, right? But every time, I don't know what it is. Every time I bite into a donut, it's really never as tasty as I thought it was going to be. Maybe that's different, but if different for you, I mean. But being aware of that, like I did enjoy the smells, and I really enjoyed standing around and celebrating with my coworkers and being excited about the opportunity to take a break and enjoy a little snack together. And so I can sit and savor part of that donut. If I feel like it, I'll eat all of it and enjoy the experience. But being mindful, sometimes you'll be disenchanted with the food and you don't have to finish eating it, and that's great. You can be mindful of that. And being mindful really can increase your ability to feel satisfied, right? To feel fullness, to feel hunger, and to control how much your portion sizes are, which can really help your emotions and help long-term healthy weight management. So anyway, at the very bottom there, it says just make sure at the end you check in. How do I feel? Am I satisfied? Am I disenchanted? Am I anxious? And then non-judgmentally trying to decide why. So being in charge, food is not in charge of you. It's not controlling you. And you're creating a relationship of trust with your body. So that can be a real journey. It can be a real journey and a challenge for a lot of us to be able to create a relationship with a body that maybe we have ignored or criticized harshly our whole lives. So at the end of the day, maybe saying things to yourself and talking with your body, you can say you really want to do what's best for your body. Your body has incredible functionality. It has done amazing things for you. You've you're all brilliant and working and studying, and your body has really, excuse me, enabled you to do the things you've done in your life and the things that you're grateful for. So doing things for your body that it needs. So listening to it, communicating, and it takes time. It's going to start slow. So my daughter, there's this picture at the bottom there of very colossal crunch. I choose not to afford those types of cereals in our home. And so my kiddos love them, and they are a major treat. My brother asked the kids if they would come to his house and help with a whole lot of yard work the other day. And he said, I'll take you to the store and let you buy cereal if you come and help me. And they were like so motivated. So they were at his house for hours, worked really hard. He took them to the store. My 8-year-old came home with a bag of this I didn't know they made cereal bags this big. It was like life-size bag. It was a huge bag, and it was cheap. I think it cost him $5, he said. And she was so excited to eat it for breakfast for the next, I don't know, year or whatever. So she ate it right then. The whole kitchen smelled like sugar. She had it for breakfast the next day and really kind of struggled with her schoolwork online after that and complained a little bit of having the headache. And we talked a little bit about, how come she was hungry an hour later. And then the next day, it happened again. And so we were able to just sit down with our little 8-year-old and just talk about, the difference between when she eats these certain foods versus her very colossal crunch in the morning, and her ability to concentrate on her schooling, and how she was hungry an hour later, and how she really just wasn't quite sure how it made her feel. And she said, maybe, Mom, I can have this bowl of cereal instead of a bowl of ice cream later when we have our treat. And I thought that was brilliant. It was a great idea. And she kind of came up with that on her own. And so hopefully that was kind of a mindfulness experience when we talked about this food that she really did enjoy. She earned it. She wanted to eat it. How could we incorporate that in a helpful way throughout her days that didn't affect her schooling or the way she felt? Anyway, so it was kind of a fun experience, and I still have a giant bag of very colossal crunch in the cupboard. I had to find like a special cupboard to put it in. So anyway, teaching our bodies to learn to listen, or teaching ourselves to learn to listen to our bodies, is really, really important, and we can do those things with our kids. So here's another quick subject we got to talk about. So I keep using like treats as examples and foods that might be a weakness, right? But what about vegetables? If I say eat vegetables mindfully, some of you are going to kind of be like, yeah, if I'm more mindful about it, I'll know that I really, really dislike them instead of plugging my nose and eating them quickly. So maybe you really don't like vegetables, scenario one. So what can we do, and what would I say maybe as a dietitian to somebody who I'm trying to get to eat more vegetables? Because we all know, all over the place, everywhere, science, right, from decades and decades and decades of science, we're all better off if we eat more vegetables. So how can we do that for our bodies that we're now trying to figure out how to take care of, right? So what I would first say are there any nutrient-rich foods that you really enjoy? And are there any vegetables that you're willing to try, but try in a different way, like try with mindfulness? It could be a very, very different experience. And always, always keep in mind that tastes are learned preferences, and they change over time. There are lots of studies out there that talk about people who drink soda on a regular basis really kind of train your body to like sweetened foods. So they eat and they are drawn to and they enjoy foods that have higher sugar content overall. And people who don't drink soda, they have less propensity to choose sweetened foods. So you're training your body to have preferences and choice. I talk to my athletes like this all the time. Just like you're training your body to compete in certain ways, you're going to train your body to eat and to fuel in certain ways. And those tastes are learned preferences. So keep that in mind as you are thinking about maybe a vegetable maybe, okay, I haven't had one for a while. Let's just use the broccoli. Let's just use broccoli. Let's say, oh, I don't want that yet. Let's say broccoli is something you haven't had for a long time. It's okay, but it's really the texture. You didn't like the texture. It was too like chewy and rubbery in your mouth, and you didn't really like it. So what if we talked about steaming it? What if we steamed it in a little bit of butter and maybe some Cajun seasoning? So it's a little softer and it changes that texture, and you love Cajun spice. Maybe we could try something like that. Or maybe you love roasted and it's be a little bit crispy on the little flowerets, and you could try it with some garlic and rosemary, and it could be roasted with other vegetables, and maybe that could really sound appetizing, a different texture and a different flavor. Would you be willing to mindfully put that together and enjoy the smell and the taste and the textures of broccoli that way? And would that be a little bit different? So that's kind of where I would go with that. Really trying to see what you're willing to do and mindfully do it. The diet mentality will just be like, you have to eat vegetables. They're not pleasurable. You have to do it. And it's all about willpower. You plug your nose and eat it. And I really would like to encourage positive emotions and positive experiences around vegetables that make them something that is comforting, something that is associated with happy moments around the table. And vegetables, they are delicious, and they can be, they're so nourishing. And if we can find ways to really enjoy them, then that's when it becomes part of lifestyle habits, right? So can you give vegetables a chance, a particular one? Start small if you need to, from a mindful perspective, and really start thinking about how you can mindfully bring those together. And the whole experience, like, how do you feel after you've eaten those? Do you feel lighter? Do you feel a real gentle sense of fullness? Those types of things. You can really feel, if you're mindful, the benefit immediately from eating more vegetables. So it's not about willpower. It's not about rules and restrictions. It's not about black and white, right? We're talking about letting food quit having the control. We want to find the gray area where we can find our own balance, where we have choice, we make the choice, it's our decision. All right? So that's kind of the basis of mindful eating. And being aware that those choices will be different every day. It's going to be different depending on what you feel and what situation and what scenario you're in and what your body is telling you that day. So being flexible and holistic that way. So scenario number 2 about vegetables, this is the one I just love. Lots of people say, actually, I do like vegetables. Not quite sure why I don't eat more of them. I have to figure out ways to maybe figure out how to get them in there. And that's a mindfulness where maybe we just need a plan. We need a plan to make the easier choices for you to enjoy more often. So, do we need to make sure they're on the shopping list? Do you need a couple more recipes that incorporate in there? Do you need to do some chopping and slicing and dicing ahead of time during the week and put them in baggies so you can grab and go, because you will eat them? You just have to have access to them more readily. So that one's always an easy one too. Still mindful, paying attention and planning ahead, and then enjoying them when you have them. But it's a little bit different than when you really don't like vegetables. So here's another schematic that I found. Found at Holly Turner Arbon. She's an RDN that has kind of a blog online, and she put together this. I thought it was really, really interesting. Mindful eating versus kind of that diet mentality. Mindfulness is centered, and then dieting's kind of on the side. Mindful eating, you kind of eat for nourishment and for health. Dieting, you eat for weight loss and appearance. Those things are external. It says right there, dieting looks for external cues. You're all about the number on the scale, the pant size, as opposed to those internal cues of mindful eating, of being aware of your emotions and your hunger and your satiety and things like that. We want mindful eating is flexible and has freedom. Dieting is very rigid. It's very restrictive. it treats food as a reward, and you can only have certain things on cheat days, right? Whereas mindful eating, treats can be fuel. We can have food. It treats food as fuel, but you can also have treats, and you give yourself permission to do that if that's something you choose. I do have a lot of friends, actually. They exercise so they can eat, and it's just a mindset, something they will go and run extra because they're going to, enjoy this particular meal later. So they work out so that they can eat. And I am actually constantly talking to athletes about how I want them to eat and fuel their bodies so that they can exercise and improve performance. So it will often be the same thing with all of us. Let's eat to nourish and fuel our body so that it can do all the things that we want it to do, whether it's running or sleeping or resting or calming a chronic disease or certain symptoms. Let's eat to help our body do the things we want it to do. Anyway, you can keep reading those, but those are some really interesting mindset and thought processes that I think many of us had, and I thought it gave perspective there. So this last slide here just talks about all of the different resources out there. If you're interested in really learning more about mindful eating, specifically maybe just mindfulness and holistic wellness, Dr. John Kabat-Zinn has, I actually have on my bedstand this "Wherever You Go, There You Are." I have every intention of reading it. I just haven't yet, but it looks like a really great book, and I'm going to read it. It's sitting there. I'm going to do it, but it's available out there. I've heard really good things about it. And then Mindfulness for Beginners. So that's kind of a holistic mindfulness information type books. There's the Center for Mindful Eating .org. They have webinars, workshops, programs, books. Dr. Michelle May, maybe many of you have already read some of these, but Eat What You Love What You Eat. And she's now come up with a whole bunch of resources on amihungry.com. And lots of books. She just came out one. It's a girlfriend of mine that helped write this book, but Mindful Eating for Athletes. So they have lots of things for diabetes, for students, for binge eating, and then, for just general, but there's a lot of resources out there, lots of things that if you really would like to learn more and get better at this, there are opportunities to do that. And maybe we can answer some more of your questions there. So with that, we kind of blasted through that. I hope that was about what we were hoping for. If you have any questions, I think there was some issues trying to type questions. I'll have to see if that was taken care of.
I can read you the question.
Okay, awesome.
Okay. Do you recommend athletes eat before exercising? And if so, what before a HIIT workout?
Oh, yeah. So for my competitive collegiate athletes that are training, multiple times a day, absolutely. And we have, it would be a higher carbohydrate fuel. And they say, there's calculations you can do, so I don't want to make it too complicated. But it just depends on how competitive you are. I know there are a lot of people that are really competitive, especially like the CrossFit and the HIIT workouts. If it's in the middle of the day, you've had breakfast, you've had lunch, you have this quick break, if you need a quick snack, a higher carbohydrate snack before a workout, that would be a great idea. I know people that just, they're older and their body has been trained to just get up in the morning and they do their workout. They don't eat anything. They just get up and do their thing. And that's how they roll, and that's how they are, and they're 45, 50 years old. Fine. That's cool. For my athletes, I really encourage them to get calories in if they can beforehand, and that those will be more carbohydrate based. So you have to train your body to do that, to consume something, to digest it, and then be ready to exercise. Some people get sick, especially if they've never done it before. So sometimes it takes training. But the concept of eating before exercise is that you're getting readily available glucose in the blood that's available to your muscles for like speed power, agility, which is a HIIT workout. So yes, eat before, but not if start small if you've never done that before, because you don't want to be puking or have a lot of indigestion, because that'll ruin a HIIT workout too. But the idea is, yes, eat before, but do it slowly and train your body to get there. I hope that answered your question.
Okay. And any suggestions for those who are allergic to fruits and vegetables and sensitive to whole grains and lean meats?
There's a lot of restrictive diets out there. Yeah, that's a hard one. I would definitely recommend seeing a dietitian and someone who specializes in allergies and food restrictive diets, so that you can incorporate enough fibers and nutrients. If there's malabsorption going on in there, if there's a lot of obviously gut issues going on, there's going to be gaps. And for people that struggle with that, sometimes it can be helped by improving your gut health through probiotics, prebiotics, maybe some FODMAP type diet, short-term things to calm things down. It just depends. There's some severe allergies, there's intolerances, there's people that think they have intolerances, but really it's an underlying gut issue that if we can solve that, you can incorporate more food. So I would just recommend really talking to a dietitian, probably with a doctor, a physician oversight, so you can make sure you're not having major nutrient deficiencies, and be able to fuel your body as well as you can with the restrictions you have in place.
Okay. Any advice getting a spouse to like vegetables? I have to cook 2 different meals at time.
Okay, ask that one more time. It's kind of glitched.
Any advice in getting a spouse to like vegetables? I have to cook 2 different meals at time.
Oh my word, I hear that all the time. Having to really cater to all the different preferences at home can be so exhausting. And so I would discourage that. Maybe having a family meeting about it, having a family discussion about mindfulness, maybe about health and holistic wellness, nutrition wellness in the home. If you've got children in the home, it's super important to have mom and dad on board when you're trying to set nutrition examples for the kids, and to have nutritious meals and to make those meals a positive experience. And in order to have all those different flavors and vegetables and different types, you gotta have spouse on board. So just having those discussions with them and really encouraging them to try different things mindfully. Are you willing to try and cook them different ways? Are they willing to really branch out and try and be brave, just like their kiddos? It's really good sometimes as well to know like your body and your risk factors. Say your spouse has a high risk of colon cancer in the family. Okay, that is a huge motivator to start incorporating vegetables, whether you like them or not. Like, incorporating vegetables into your meals and into your everyday life is a major risk reducer for colon cancer. So is that a motivator? Like, find motivators health-wise to get your spouse on board, but it's going to have to be, a discussion. Kind of talk to them about health and wellness for the family, for each other. And I'm kind of hungry. I would never make 2 meals. Like, this is what we're eating. But you're sweet to make 2 meals. That's really sweet. I hope that answers your question.
Okay. And then do you have any good resources for stress and the way we metabolize our food? I eat some foods as before COVID, primarily raw vegan, and I'm actually exercising more with taking my dog for many, many walks, but I've gained weight since being home. I'm also sleeping a lot more.
So you're sleeping a lot more, you're walking a lot more, but the diet has changed. Is that what it says?
No, let's see. Maybe the way stress metabolizes the food. She's basically not changed anything
Okay.
with food diet, and yeah, she's walking more but sleeping more as well.
And hasn't changed anything with the diet, but has noticed negative health effects?
Healthy raw vegan diet.
So hopefully I understand that question well. So if you're eating a healthy diet and then the changes, you're still staying active, you're trying to do a lot of things, but there have been some maybe negative health changes, you feel like. I think good for you for being kind of mindful of maybe trying to figure out what's going on. You've noticed a shift in some things, and that's good to be mindful, and really trying to delve into what exactly is maybe the cause. Is it emotional or is it physical? And it's probably a combination of the two. This has been kind of hard, I think, for everybody. Checking also to making sure if you're eating a raw vegan diet, I would also recommend those types of pretty restrictive diets to be communicating with a dietitian. Making sure you don't have any nutrient deficiencies on accident, B12 specifically. Usually people on a vegan diet that have been on it a long time, they're very aware of all those things, and taking all the supplements that they need. Lacking like a vitamin B12 will really take its toll. So if you had a specific micronutrient or deficiency, maybe you're lacking something that might make you feel rotten slowly and over time, maybe. So really talking to a dietitian and looking at the holistic, like the diet, the exercise, the sleep, and making sure you're getting everything you need so there aren't any gaps if you're feeling kind of a health struggle.
Okay. Do you recommend taking any specific vitamins or individual vitamins?
So that is totally individualized, actually. So I've counseled with people before that I think, they're really at high risk for athletes specifically, maybe chronic iron deficiency anemia. And so we might recommend an iron supplement, right, for them in particular. What if they've got a GI, maybe an irritable bowel or celiac or something that they struggle with absorption? We might recommend a multivitamin. Like I mentioned before, if they're choosing to be vegan or diet that was kind of restrictive, they really need to pay attention to specific vitamins and minerals. So we might analyze the individual diet as a whole and then make sure there are no deficiencies. So it's super individualized. If you're older versus younger, maybe you're having, stress fractures and you need to have extra calcium. Maybe there's a vitamin D deficiency because of where you live. It's very individualized. So right now I just finished a round of antibiotics because I wasn't feeling well, and I've ordered a probiotic, and I'm eating lots of prebiotics. I'm counting my fiber, soluble fiber. I'm trying to make sure I'm eating like different probiotic foods, but I felt like I needed a probiotic supplement at least to get myself put back together. But that's not something I do long term. So anyway, it kind of depends on the individual, what you're eating, when, where you live, and if there's any gaps. So again, that would be really helpful to have a dietitian look at that and make sure you're meeting needs in all of those areas. So no, I don't blanket say everybody take a pill.
Do you have recommendations for people who have chronic disease like RA?
So rheumatoid arthritis, those are hard, those autoimmune diseases. So there's a lot of, my brother has rheumatoid arthritis, And actually, so we've got some autoimmune disease that runs in our family. And oftentimes there are foods that can trigger those things. I think now, like with multiple sclerosis, they talk about some people, not everyone, there's a certain subgroup of people that it's like a way that a celiac disease manifests itself. It's an interesting way. So I think there's allergy testing that you can do as far as food. I know there's a lot of other things you can do for RA, but for nutrition, I think there's a lot of testing that my brother did get done, and he finds certain foods can throw him into flare-ups, and that's just what he says. But it's not consistent between people, which is really hard. So you have those types of conditions, being very mindful about how you feel when you eat certain foods and when you don't, is probably a good idea to keep a food diary and keep a log of maybe your flare-ups and your when you're in remission. I know hydration is a really big deal, those types of things. And if you have a lot of food triggers and a lot of sensitivities, that's definitely somebody who you'd want to consider taking a supplement of some kind, possibly, depending on what your diet ends up being, your sustainable long-term diet. So yeah, good luck with those. Those are very, again, pretty individualized as well.
Do you have any recommendations for breakfast that is low carb aside from eggs to start my day off right?
Oh, that's a good question. So I struggle with hypoglycemia. And so if I eat a bowl of cereal for breakfast, then I'm a goner. So low carb is something I really lean towards. So the other day, I just have basil fresh in my garden. So I had a bowl of cottage cheese. I like that kind of, it sounds disgusting. I'm so sorry. The bowl of cottage cheese, I had fresh sliced tomatoes, and then I put fresh basil in there with salt and pepper. That's pretty good. You could add avocados and tomatoes. I'm trying to think. I know eggs can get kind of exhausting. I understand that. I have to have a little bit of carb, but I love like a whole grain piece of toast. If that's too much for you, you can do something else. But then I add avocado and vegetables on that, even black beans, those types of things. Brain is totally blank. I think that's all I do. But avocados, vegetables, I mean, incorporating, I know those sound a little bit skittywampus sometimes. You can totally make a vegetable plate in the morning. If that's what you want to do, it's awesome. It might be not non-traditional breakfast, but it'll be good for you. I like green smoothies that you can make a little bit higher in protein and lower in carb if you add lots of veggies and stuff like that. That's another one I do, the green smoothie.
Okay. How do you reduce sugar cravings?
That's a really good question, and it's kind of complex. It's not something that we're like, oh, it's just willpower, right? So it can be really mindful. You got to pay attention to what's triggering those things. Is it hunger? Are you hungry? Or are you like, I'm craving sugar and I've done eating, so I know it's not hungry. It's just, is it habit? Is it something I always do? So it's something that my body's like, that Pavlov's theory. Now it's just triggered. It's dinner time. That means dinner's over and I eat ice cream. What's going on physiologically in your body and emotionally, and just maybe tying those things together. One of the main things, though, being aware of is our body, naturally, we all crave sugar. Our brain has to have carbohydrates, has to have glucose to function. Our red blood cells have to have glucose to function. So naturally, physiologically, we crave glucose because it keeps us alive. It keeps our brain functioning. So being aware of that, and then it has like physiological positive effects when we eat it, a carbohydrate or a sugar. So keeping that in mind. I desperately crave sugar when I'm hungry because your body really, really wants it. So eating smaller, I call them eating episodes sometimes. So smaller eating episodes spaced throughout the day can really keep your blood sugar stable and can keep your hunger and satiety cues stable, so you're not stark raving hungry or like way full and sick. You're throughout the day, that your blood sugar is stable, not bouncing all over. That can really help with sugar cravings that are, like I said, naturally, physiologically natural. So, and making sure there's plenty of protein in those, so that you drink a soda, it shoots your blood sugar up and then it drops and you're craving it again, so you drink some more, right? So keeping plenty of healthy fats and proteins and good complex carbohydrates in those eating episodes will maintain blood sugar throughout the day. And I feel like that helps probably the most physiologically. And if it's a mental thing, if it's a mind thing that you need to just be mindful about and work on managing stress and anxiety to control sugar cravings, then that's something where mindful eating will really come into play and really be helpful there. But physiologically, strategizing to have good, healthy, balanced meals every 3 to 4 hours all day long will help a lot with sugar craving.
Okay. And then last question. So there's a discussion about how there wasn't a lot of information about protein, and they would like to know what source of protein that you recommend at every meal, especially for women, where it's a lot harder for women to intake enough protein.
Okay, I probably should make sure everybody can hear those questions. Maybe they can see them typed. I can't see them typed. So the question is, protein. What do I recommend for protein for the different meals, and especially for women who feel like it's harder for them to get enough protein? So as a dietitian, I am all about moderation and variety. So at the end of the day, everybody's a little individualized, right? The calculations are done on gram per kilogram of weight. So depending on your age and your exercise level, your health conditions, right? Then I would choose a gram per kilogram according to your weight, and we would come up with a range of protein of grams per day. But for a lot of us, those ranges will be similar. And so, and I recommend plenty of plant proteins, right? Probably at least one vegetarian meal a week. If you are a heavy meat eater, I would definitely encourage incorporating more plant proteins like beans, legumes. There's soy proteins out there. There's why can't I think of more proteins? They'll come to me. Pea proteins, nuts are proteins. Salmon and fish are really healthy proteins that sometimes we don't incorporate enough of, and we have great salmon here in Idaho. So those types, switching up the types of fish. So overall recommendation is small amounts of red meat and high fat meat, so like your bacon and your sausage and the ribs and those things that are really high fat, saturated fat, we keep on the low end. But we want to have 3 servings of fish a week. We want to have multiple servings of plant proteins, and then servings of low fat meats like chicken and fish and things like that. So keeping that in mind when you're planning your meals, and having a variety of different proteins throughout. Lentils are another great source of protein. So when you're making your food, so we make tacos sometimes, right? I've got a family of 7. I'll cut the meat down and I add lots of beans, and so that there's multiple sources of protein in there. Good source of plant protein, and also some animal protein just switches it up. And really, at the end of the day, you should spread out your protein intake throughout the day. you're not having all your protein at night and none in the morning. So good to have good solid protein throughout the day. They say 15 grams of protein per meal or so throughout the day should give you, I think some of us ladies will range from 80 to 100, depending on your weight, grams of protein a day, and making sure they come from all different sources. And you would be surprised about how much protein you're probably actually getting. If you have a whole grain piece of bread, there's 4 grams of protein in one slice of 100% whole wheat. In a white piece of bread, there's like less than one maybe. So if you have a sandwich on whole grain bread, that's 8 grams of protein. Say we're going for 15, right? And you put some ham on there or some chicken, and that all you need is like 2 ounces, and you've got 15 grams just from 3 ounces or so. You've already got your 15 to 20 grams just in that sandwich, if that makes sense. And then say you have lots of veggies all over it. If you have a little bit of cheese, and that gives you more protein. Maybe you only have half a sandwich, and then 3 hours later, because you can't eat the whole thing, then you have it again. Anyway, there are a lot of different ways to incorporate protein. Peas are high in protein. Cottage cheese is super high in protein. If you're just paying attention to the different things that you're eating and drinking, hopefully there will be plenty of protein, and you just practice distributing those carefully throughout the day and making sure you get a variety of protein, plants and animal, is what I encourage overall for a normal, healthy, non-allergic person. So I hope that answered the question. That was a really good question.
I'd like to thank everyone for attending, and I'd like to let you also know that the slides and the recordings will be on caves.org. It'll take a couple days to get them posted, but you can find them on caves.org.
All right. Thank you so much.